I will turn the mic over very happily to Elena Passarello. Thanks.
Is there a hike tomorrow? Is there a hike tomorrow? Did I miss the hike, Mel? Aw, okay, great. Can't wait. Hi, everybody. Hi. Thank you so much for being here. I am so honored to be here, like physically here, right here in front of this podium, because I have been sitting in this house for the past week and a half, 10 days, whatever, and listening to so much incredible material from poets, playwrights, nonfiction writers, and fiction writers too. Nonfiction writers, by the way, who are members of the very first nonfiction cohort in the history of the Sewanee Writers Conference. I can't even express how exciting that is, that that's now here at Sewanee, and that I got to be a part of it, and that the people who make up that first cohort with me are the people who are in my workshop, especially my partner in crime, Alex, my other partner in crime, Alicia, and the amazing writing that these folks have put forward. It's just been just a sincere honor. So thank you so much to Leah and Gwen and Adam and the staff who have kicked ass at this podium themselves. And thanks so much to all of you in advance for listening. Okay, so I'm a very superstitious person, and I have this essay that I always read if ever I'm scheduled to give a reading on Thursdays. No, I'm not kidding, because I think sort of the through line of all my projects is I write about performers, performing animals, performing humans, performing body parts, and this is a performer who only performed on Thursdays, and he's very, very important to me in terms of figuring out what I really wanted to do with my second book. And he kind of, when I researched him and researched the world that he lived in, he opened the whole project up to me. And he doesn't get to perform on Thursdays anymore because he's been dead for 500 years. So now I'm going to let him perform a little bit now. He's a bear. And he was in the brutal bear baiting ring that was called a bear garden in Elizabethan England, in a structure that was identical to that of the Globe, that was right next to the Globe at the exact time that Shakespeare was putting his plays on at the Globe. So literally when Hamlet was being performed, this bear, Sakerson, was performing himself. And Shakespeare, we don't know that much about him, but we know that he was a little bit of a bitch. Like he was competitive like me, and he kind of like does these kind of like side-eye name checks to a lot of people who were competing for people and other things that were competing for ticket sales for his plays. There's a reference to this children's company in Hamlet. The player king in Hamlet, we think is a dig. People who wrote books that I read, they think that it's a dig at this like other sort of rival company's leading man, and there's a lot of references to Christopher Marlowe. Some of them are actually kind of sweet after he died. But the only rival whose name he actually wrote into one of his plays is this bear, Sakerson. And when I learned that, this bear had this terrible life, but afterward, year after year, century after century, his name was uttered by humans, by the same species that put him into the position that he was in, and this sort of like complicated immortalization. I knew what I needed to do with the essay, I knew what I needed to research, and I knew what I needed to do with the book. So it's one of two things that I'm going to read. Both are under 10 minutes long. This is called, and have you ever written an essay before the pandemic, and then the pandemic happened, and then you're like, is this about the pandemic? This is one of those. Thanks in advance for listening. Sakerson. The London garden, brackish and packed in, was hazy. Oh, we have to imagine that we're in the garden here. Okay, you guys, so we're here, we're in the garden, we're all here. There's an upstairs, there's a downstairs. The audience sort of goes a little bit further. There's some rich people on the stage, right? But it looks just like this, okay? So we're in the garden. The London garden, brackish and packed in, was hazy with a dozen kinds of flesh. The bulls, cocks, mastiffs, men, and chimpanzees in air so rickety it lowered the roof. So dark, the line between crowd and beasts was marred. There, in that black, Sir Raleigh took his Frenchmen, and other men of duty met their spies. The reason for their famous fireworks, just so the folks who'd wagered bets could see. A rose of flames, pitched high above the crowd, fired smoke into the muck that hung about. It spun. It spat red bits around the seats. They'd rig it to toss pears as it rotated. The fruit-mad crowd would then jump up and chase the rolling pears out to the bankside streets. Or yard boys, eager in their filthy gloves, would toss hot bread upon the patrons' laps, which made them clutch and scurry toward the exits. Outside, they'd find some other Sunday sport, an archery butt, a woman, or a play. The stews downriver had less fucking in them, and St. Bartholomew's floors less wet with blood. The bloody muzzle, or the mastiff's blood, the blood of fisticuffs up in the stands, the blood of offal floated down the Thames to Bankside from the abattoirs of town, and by the time the sentry turned around, it seemed the blood most often spilled was his. But do not think that London's garden crowd imagined him some broken, bashed-in thing. And believe me, this is tricky. I might see the lives of baited bears as nothing but a broken cord of muzzle, chain, and stake, of blunted teeth, barrages of dog jaws, of living out a mongrel just to have another thrown upon your slavered flesh. That rink's the only place that he could run, a hard-won constitutional, running laps and dodging bulls in that dank polygon, that garden, broken even in its flowers. The bullseyes, the rosettes they affixed to his brow were bullseyes for the mastiffs when they jump, and jump they did, mouths tearing at the flesh that leered at them from each side of the bloom. They bit so hard that London citizens grew up thinking a bear's eyes to be pink. A few years of that, he was too blind to fight. The bearward had to get creative then. Chained center, hunkered, lashed by volunteers until the blood ran rivers down his spine. Sometimes he'd raise his matted arms and gnash about the lash until it snapped in half. And once, he stooped low to the lazy knot, untied himself with effort from the stake, then nosed about the rink in backward loops to hear the ladies scream, the bearward scramble. They dragged him off stage to his pit in cheers. For even then, near lame and sightless, he could still throw 9 stone mastiffs to the stands, up to the boxes, to the ladies' laps, bypassing pumpkin hose and straight to the skirts, like he could sniff a woman's quivering thigh and hurl the big dog, head or tail, right to her. A snort, a twitch to shudder the dog's spit, a fling, a lady's lap, a going, ah! And then they'd add another dog, then 4, till 6 or 7 mastiffs lined the rink, the sound more deafening since his sight was gone. God damn it, if he wasn't still around. They could have put his picture on the money. Elizabeth, who never said hello, loved him enough to ban all Thursday sport. Upon the mildest Thursdays, he'd parade out past the playhouse, down to London Bridge. He'd smell the ragmen, actors, punks in stews who yelled for him in ripe cacophony. The bulls in ribboned horns all marched behind. The cocks in boxes and the dogs behind. The only bear who ever led the dogs. And even on his nights off, he appeared in name checks at the Hope, the Rose, the Globe, a dactyl in the mouths of water poets, the only rival Shakespeare called by name. In Johnson, in Act 5 at Dunsinane, at Middle Temple Hall on Candlemas, when Chambers' fairest boy in fake dugs crooned, "Have you not set mine honor at the stake and baited it with all the unmuzzled thoughts that tyrannous heart can think?" So, it'd be wrong to match that bear with breaking. They built him up. They called him out by name because they read in him a secret code both terrifying and recognizable. They saw it in his stance, up on 2 legs, the 4 paws spread, the 10 claws digital. They saw it in his low-slung hips and gut, the way his pupils, round and beady, lived inside a circle of expressive white. And milliseconds prior to the bite, they saw it when he shut his eyes and sighed. What did they see? They saw themselves, of course. A taller man, more leaden and hirsute, with thick skin better suited for a beating, but still their bear, this massive chestnut frame dwarfed tiny by a darkened rink of foes. A smaller ratio of the rink itself dwarfed by the river, flowing to their north, that lurid, pestilent Thames. 6 city plagues, the pox, the new ague, the curious sweats, all floated past their bear garden in leagues. A river of unprecedented sick. In 92, things got so royally poxed, the playhouses were forced to shutter up. A quarter of their population down each decade, give or take 100 score. And a blighted age can make a garden blind. Each ticket holder turns left, right, behind, then wonders which part of that dark quartet will suffer an unnatural upset next. For when our clans explode up into towns, the backbite comes from nature, and it's smart. The devil holds back nature by the ears, takes aim, makes wager, then releases it. We toss it off, and it regenerates. 6 natural mouths leap forth before we're primed. Parades of sickness cannot be explained by any learned clansmen, physics, priests. This inexplicable can send us toward an unclanned occupation with the self. And selves, like famous bears, are singular. We are, then, switches places with I am. And clans bewitched by I ams become crowds, which are an altogether different thing. He heard those I ams in the garden's roar. I am this bear, stuck in this blighted rink, beset upon by nature's ticking clock. I am not hunkered down in numbered packs. Instead, I am awaiting death alone. I am afraid of time's encroaching power. For each new year, I am more bluntly struck. I feel pain, feel it doubling, then I am it. I am always in wait of time's new teeth. And though befuddled, drunk on sick, I am unfit to tear mine eyes away from him. The growl of him, his mighty swipe, his blood, the way he foams both in and out of hours. My chain of foes would weigh less, I am sure, if I could shake off minutes, break pain's spine, or send plague squealing to a bitch's lap. For even if I knew more time, more sick was at the go, it'd be a righteous salve to fight whatever hour's on me now, to discard the sick dog of what is now and shake it, a contaminated rag stained with the gusto of my intellect. Yes, I am jealous of his natural acts, and so I'll hit his nature with a stick. And that chipper essay is Sackerson. Thank you for listening. Thank you. Okay, hard pivot, just a rock hard pivot. This is a little short thing. I wanted to honor all of you guys who are reading brand new stuff. I'm really impressed by people who do. I'm going to do that too. I'm working on 2 books right now about Elvis Presley. The first one was supposed to be the book, but it got kind of COVIDed because I was going to drive around and sort of look at all the ways people were remembering Elvis, both interesting and wacky and complicated and also problematic and deserving of conversations and revision. And I wanted to do it the year that Elvis was dead longer than he was alive. He died in 1977 at the age of 42, and his official day of his legacy outliving him was in 2020. So I spent the night in his teenage bedroom in Memphis, which I can tell you a little bit about the French house. I got married to my sweetheart of 20 years by an Elvis impersonator in Las Vegas on Leap Day. Thank you. I wear my ring on the other finger because it doesn't fit on this one. That's how cut out I am for marriage. But neither was Elvis. And then COVID happened and I had to stop. So while I was in COVID land, I watched all 31 of Elvis Presley's movies. Jill, you're clapping. Jill, the next sentence that I had planned when I was practicing this in the shower was, nobody watches Elvis movies anymore. You did? Okay. Do you have a favorite? Okay, well, I hope it's this one. It's not. Some of the Elvis movies are actually pretty good. He made 31 films in about 10 years. The guy who directed Casablanca directed an Elvis movie called King Creole. Walter Matthau plays a menacing gangster in it. He's really good. And Carolyn Jones, before she became TV's Morticia Addams, is amazing in it. Some of them they're not good, but they're fun in kind of like a beach blanket bingo kind of way. And some of them are patently offensive. One thing that people like, one thing that's in all of them is songs. I think one of the reasons a lot of his movies are kind of crappy is the Colonel really wanted them all to be musicals. And he also didn't want to pay very much for those songs. So there are some really shitty Elvis songs that he sings. And a lot of Elvis enthusiasts like to debate which is the worst Elvis movie song. Some people say that it's "There's No Room to Roomba in a Sports Car." I think the right answer is "Yoga Is as Yoga Does," which is a duet about yoga that he does with Elsa Lanchester, who was the original bride of Frankenstein, and she ended her career singing a duet about yoga with a 30-year-old Elvis Presley. But a lot of people point to this song, "Song of the Shrimp." And I disagree because I heard a cover of this song when I was in high school that is still very dear to me. This is a super quick read, 6 minutes. The title of the essay, I'll just read an excerpt. The title of the essay is the title of the film, "Girls, Girls, Girls." We're back in Hawaii. This is his 24th movie. We're back in Hawaii, but on a much lower budget, and everything seems fuzzier this time. The tropical stage pictures have lost their luster, and there's not much to hold on to story-wise. Elvis is Ross Carpenter, a nightclub singer and fisherman who dreams of owning a boat. End of plot. I have no clue why, of all the Elvis comedies, this is the one called Girls, 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 since I clock very few women in most scenes. This is compensated for in the last musical number, I suppose, when Elvis sings the title song in the center of a gaggle of women who are doing the twist. But for the rest of the movie, the only girls with whom he interacts are his cute little nieces, a sassy ingenue who is secretly rich enough to buy him that boat, and a nightclub singer whose name I have immediately forgotten. Other than that, Girls, Girls, Girls is an epic sausage party of Elvis cavorting with his best friends, adopted dads, bucket-hatted villains, and teams of fishermen. Not even the boat that Elvis covets has a girl's name. The only thing I knew ahead of time about this film was that it features the Song of the Shrimp, one of 3 Elvis numbers devoted to invertebrate seafood, along with Clam Bake and Do the Clam. Back in the era of mixtapes, a guy pal of mine with great musical taste made me a compilation that included a cover of this forgotten Elvis tune by Townes Van Zandt, my favorite Texas musician this side of Beyonce. Van Zandt is one of the more soulful singers of the late 20th century, and just about every guy that I made out with in high school and college was obsessed with him. Probably because, like them, Van Zandt was coltish and funny and restless and sad. This live cover of the Shrimp song comes from a 1994 show in London in which Townes Van Zandt tells the crowd he'd stayed up all night watching an Elvis festival on the tube just so he could hear the song again. He assumed he'd find Elvis singing Song of the Shrimp in King Creole until a friend corrected him. "Nah, man, it's Girls, Girls, Girls." I don't know why Townes Van Zandt sounds like Matthew McConaughey in my mind, but he does. The Song of the Shrimp is a calypso murder ballad about a young crustacean lured away from his clueless parents by a deceptive ad in a shrimp newspaper. The verses end with the shrimp being scooped up to become somebody's po' boy, and the chorus, which Van Zandt sings in a sweet campfire croon, goes as follows. "Goodbye, Mommy Shrimp. Papa, shake my hand. Here come the shrimp boat for to take me to Louisiana." Woof. I don't know what frustrates me more, the line about a shrimp shaking another shrimp's hand, or the idea that underwater shrimps read newspapers. Frustrating, too, is the fact that Elvis is on a Hawaiian boat singing about a species from the Gulf of freaking Mexico. But if you squint, you'll find hints of the Elvis myth present in these god-awful shrimp lyrics. A mama's boy leaving the home he knows for a larger piece of the world and getting more than he bargained for, which ultimately prevents him from returning to the simpler places that he more clearly understood. Van Zandt tells his lively London audience he has no idea why he's playing them this Elvis tune. "This is a sing-along that nobody is required to sing along with," he says. "I don't even know why I'm singing it. It gets worse before it gets worse before it even starts." Though Elvis's rendition of the Shrimp song is mercifully over within 2 minutes, Van Zandt's cover stretches past the 5-minute mark because he keeps stopping to monologue, to berate the song and laugh. He heckles himself as the verses roll by, the audience roaring with laughter. "Oh, this is the last time I'm ever singing this song," he jokes. "I don't have to put up with this sort of abuse." But this won't be the last time that Townes performs Song of the Shrimp. He'd played it before and will do so dozens more times over the next 2 years until his early death at the end of 1996. He refuses to call it Song of the Shrimp on any live album, demoting the title to Shrimp Song because trying to give a serious name to this song is like nailing Jell-O to a tree. In bootlegs of his very last performances, he sings only a verse and a half before moving on, in a voice that's much weaker and reedier than the belly-laughing caterwaul of this London set. They're all related. I hate to say it, but they all seem kind of related, Van Zandt tells his guffawing English audience before abandoning the Shrimps to sing his next tune. And what he plays next is his saddest and most famous song. And I revel in the fact that Townes Van Zandt hears these two songs as related. The inimitable Pancho and Lefty tells the story of two outlaws, one who dies in a blaze of glory and one who retreats into sad obscurity. That Van Zandt follows a tune about anatomically incorrect crustaceans with one of the best songs I've ever heard. Merle Haggard, Emmylou Harris, Freddie Fender, and other legends have passionately covered it. That creates a vertigo I almost cannot bear. For some reason, I would rather hear those superstar covers of Pancho and save Van Zandt with his sweet nature and electric presence for this silly Elvis song. He puts a hint of a C in the name of the title character, Scrump, just like my Carolina grandmother did, and the crowd titters every time he says it. More than anything, his cover is a duet between his Texas wit and the roars of laughter from London's Union Chapel Theater. Van Zandt was 12 when he sat in his living room and watched Elvis shake the crowd of the Ed Sullivan Theater. His father had recently given him a guitar. I just thought that Elvis had all the money in the world, all the Cadillacs and all the girls, and all he did was play the guitar and sing, and that made a big impression on me, he told an interviewer in 1991. 2 years after the London show, Van Zandt almost died in Memphis, barely 5 miles from where Elvis did. But unlike Presley, Van Zandt was broke and homeless, trying to record an album on a fractured hip with the drummer from Sonic Youth. His body was so chemically dependent that the doctor said a home detox might kill him. He died full of liquor on the other side of the state, but the autopsy lists his cause of death as a kind of heart failure, just like the man who inspired him to play. By the end, he'd sold his house and signed the rights of all his songs away to his ex-wife and children, only making money from the tiny live shows until the last month of his life. When Townes Van Zandt died, the only things he owned were a camper van, a motorcycle, and a boat with a woman's name. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you guys very, very much. Thank you.